They thought she was just the cleaner. The girl with the faded uniform and the squeaky mop, the one they could shout at, the one who did not matter. But the night they planned to disgrace her, the proud people in that hall could not even lift their heads to look at her. Because the cleaner they had insulted was holding their entire family name in her quiet hands. And the man who defended her that night, he was hiding a secret bigger than hers. 2 people walked into that hotel wearing a lie. Both of them came to test a stranger. Neither of them knew the stranger had come to test them too. This is a story about the masks we wear to find out who is real, and the small, invisible people who turned out to be the ones holding all the power. If a story about pride, disguise, and the dignity of ordinary people speaks to you, please like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Sit back and let me take you in. Ade Zimbabwe was sitting in her father's parlor, looking at a glass table she had looked at 1,000 times before. The room was the kind of room that made strangers behave well. The chairs were wide and soft. The curtains fell heavy from the ceiling like they were tired. On the wall hung photographs of her father shaking hands with governors, bank chairmen, 2 ministers, and one man whose face she had forgotten, but whose handshake her father still bragged about. Anybody who walked into that house would swear the girl sitting there had no single reason to be unhappy. That was the problem. People always saw the house. They never saw her. She was the only child of Chief Ikena Mbakwe, a wealthy man who was used to ending arguments simply by deciding they were over. Chief Ikena loved his daughter. Everybody knew he loved her. But his love arrived the way a delivery van arrives, full of things you did not order with a form you had to sign. "A daisy," he called from his chair, folding his newspaper with the seriousness of a man folding a contract. "Come and sit. We must talk about your future." "I'm already sitting, Daddy." "Then sit and listen properly." He set the newspaper down. "The time has come. I have spoken with Chief Okwudili Eze. You know his name. Everybody in this state knows his name. His son has returned from abroad. Somtochukwu, a serious young man, educated, responsible, from a clean family." He said, "Clean the way other men said rich. I want you to meet him on Friday." Adeze felt the tiredness come down on her like a heavy curtain of its own. "Another arranged meeting. Don't say it like that. But that is exactly what it is. You want me to go and sit across from a man and start measuring him for a wedding suit. I want you to know him. I don't want to know a person like this, Daddy. Lined up, inspected, approved by 2 old men who play golf together." Chief Ikena's jaw moved the way it always moved before he said something he believed was final. "It is not only about what you want. Marriage is family. Family is name. Name is everything we have built. You think this house fell from the sky? I never said the house fell from the sky." "Then behave like the daughter of the man who built it." Before she could answer, the door opened and her aunt walked in without knocking, because Mama Ngozi had never in her life knocked on a door in that house. Mama Ngozi was Chief Ikena's elder sister. She had her own house 3 streets away, a husband somewhere who had learned to be quiet, and an opinion about everything that moved. She had been listening from the corridor. She was always listening from somewhere, and she came in already loaded. "A days," she said, sitting down heavily and arranging her wrapper like a queen arranging a kingdom. "What is your own problem this time?" "Eh? Do you know how many girls in this town are fasting and praying for the kind of life you are squeezing your face at?" "Mama, I only said, you always only said." She waved her hand. "In my time, some women did not even see the man's face until the wedding morning. And we married, and we built homes. You children of today, you want love to come down like rain on your head while you sit and do nothing. I don't want love to fall from the sky, Mama. I just want to choose for myself." "Choose?" Mama Ngozi laughed without any joy in it. "And your choosing, where has it carried you so far? You are beautiful, yes. Your father has money, yes. But beauty is a candle, my daughter. It burns. And while it is burning, you are here choosing." Adeze looked from her aunt to her father, and she felt the way she always felt in that parlor, like a beautiful thing in a glass case that everybody admired and nobody asked. "Fine," she said. "I will go." Her father relaxed his shoulders. Mama Ngozi smiled like she had personally won something. But they did not hear what Adieze heard inside her own chest, which was her voice going flat and cold. "I will meet him," she said. She did not say she would behave. She did not say she would smile. And somewhere behind her eyes, the plan was already beginning to form. Quiet, stubborn, and dangerous. That same evening, on the other side of this D, in a house and just as proud, Somtochukwu Eze was having almost exactly the same fight. Somto was the only son of Chief Okwudili, a businessman who believed the family name was a glass vase that one careless child could shatter forever. Somto was tall, quiet, and serious in a way that made people behave around him. He had grown up inside money, and money had not made him feel free. It had only made everybody want something from him. He stood by the window in his father's study, with his hands pushed into his pockets, his jaw tight. "You will attend the meeting on Friday," Chief Okwudili said from his armchair. "Daddy, I don't want this. You have not even seen the girl." "That is exactly my point. I don't know her. And you want me to start looking at a stranger like she is my future wife, only because her father is useful to you. Watch how you talk to me. I'm not disrespecting you. I'm telling you the truth. I don't want to marry a woman who was selected through a business friendship like a contract clause." His mother, Mrs. Adaobi, sat beside her husband. She was an elegant, careful woman who measured every situation by what people would say about it afterwards. She loved her son. She also believed that a man from their kind of family had a duty to marry in a way that protected the family. "Somtu," she said gently, "the girl is from a good home. Her father is respected. She is educated. What exactly is wrong with that? What is wrong is that nobody is asking what I want. And what do you want?" His father snapped. Somto turned from the window. "I want someone who will choose me when there is no money attached to my name, no business connection, no family weight, just me. Is that too strange a thing to want in this house?" "My son," his mother said, "poverty is not a love film." Something in Somto's chest tightened. "Nobody is talking about poverty, Mummy. I'm talking about being known. Do you understand the difference? Every woman I have ever met already knew my account balance before she knew my surname." "Enough," his father said, and the word landed like a door closing. Somto looked at both of them and felt the old, useless anger rise. They did not understand. Or maybe they understood perfectly and simply did not care. "Fine," he said. "I will go." His mother looked relieved. His father gave one small nod, the kind of nod that ended meetings. But Somto was already a stranger to the girl he was being sent to meet. In his mind, she was one of those rich daughters who smiled for photographs and stepped over poor people the way you step over a puddle. He had built the whole woman in his head, and he already disliked her. He did not know that, at that very moment, across the city, that same girl was busy disliking him too. Later that night, Adesize called the one person who never lied to her. Ifeoma picked up on the second ring. They had been friends since their first year at university when Ifeomafa had loaned Adeze a pen during an exam and refused on principle to be impressed by her surname ever since. "Your voice already sounds like Wahala," Ifeoma said. "What did he do now?" "My father has arranged another meeting." "Ah, again. With who this time?" "Somtochukwu Eze, Chief Okwudili's son." "The Eze family?" "Of course. They will never bring you somebody ordinary. It is always rich meeting rich, like two banks merging." "I'm tired, Ife." Adeze pulled her knees up onto the bed. "I'm so tired of men who come around because of my father. They smile too much. They talk too sweetly. They sit there being humble, and the moment they smell a chance, they start talking about joining families and protecting legacy and building empires. Not one of them has ever asked me if I am happy. Not one. So what do you want to do? Because I know that silence. That is your scheming silence. I want this one to fail. You always want them to fail. That part is not new. This time I want to fail it properly." Adeze paused, and when she spoke again, her voice had gone quiet and certain. "I'm going to go to that meeting dressed as a cleaner." The line went silent. Please tell me you are joking." "I'm not joking. As a cleaner. You, Adeze Mbakwe, you want to put on a cleaner's uniform and go and mop a floor in a hotel." "Yes. Why?" "Adeze, why would you do this to yourself?" "Because I want to see him when he thinks I am nobody." Adeze's voice did not shake. She had thought about this for hours. "If he is the kind of man who insults a cleaner, I will know he is proud, and I will know I was right all along. If he looks straight through me like I am a piece of furniture, I will know he is exactly like the rest of them. And if," she stopped. "And if he is kind," Ifeoma finished softly. "Then it gets complicated. It is already complicated, Ada. Lies don't stay small. They grow legs. You start with one small disguise, and before you know it, the whole thing is walking around the house at night. I'm not doing it to hurt anybody. I just want the truth for once. One time. Is that too much? The truth doesn't usually come dressed in a costume, my friend. It's the only way I can think of. Will you help me or not?" Ifeoma sighed, the long sigh of a woman who already knew she would help out and was disappointed in herself about it. "I will warn you while I help you. There is a difference, and one day you will need to know that difference. For the first time that whole day, Adiez laughed. Just a little. But it was real. The next afternoon, Ifeoma brought the uniform in a black nylon bag like contraband. It was not new. The shirt had faded to the color of weak tea, and the skirt was loose at the waist and a little too long. Adiez took off her earrings, her bracelet, her wristwatch, the slim gold necklace her father had given her on her last birthday. She wiped most of the makeup from her face with a wet wipe, and pulled her hair back into a plain, low bun. She stood in front of the mirror and went quiet. The woman looking back at her was a stranger, no shine of money on her skin, no expensive perfume rising off her wrists, no surname written across her face, just a tired-looking young woman in a worn uniform, holding a small bag with a broken zip. "You look different," Ifeoma said behind her. "You can still change your mind, you know. Right now, nobody has been hurt yet." "No." Adeze straightened the collar. "Let Somtochukwu Eze come. Tonight I will see what kind of man he really is." What she did not know, what nobody had told her, was that across the city a young man was standing in front of his own mirror, planning his own disguise. And by Friday night, two people who claimed to hate lies above everything would walk into the same hotel wearing the very same one. Somto did not sleep early that night. His father's words kept circling back to him like flies he could not wave away. Poverty is not a love film. He was still angry. But underneath the anger, one fine thing was very clear to him. If he walked into that meeting as himself, everybody at that table would perform. The girl would perform, he would perform. It would be theater, and he would learn nothing. So he picked up his phone and called Danjuma. Danjuma was his personal assistant, loyal, sharp, funny without trying too hard, and permanently convinced that Somto's ideas were going to get them both into trouble one day. "Oga," Danjuma answered, his voice thick with sleep. "Why are you calling me by this time of the night? Hope no problem? There is a problem, and you are going to help me solve it." Danjuma went very quiet. Somto smiled to himself. "Relax. Nobody has died. That your relax is the exact thing I don't trust, sir. On Friday, you are going to dress well and go to the blind date as me." The silence on the line became deeper, almost holy. "Sir," Danjuma said at last, "me pretend to be you, a billionaire's son? Oga, even the way I drink water will expose me. My normal is not the same as your normal. My normal is checking the price before I add anything to a plate of food. You only need to sit at the table, talk small, drink something and observe the girl. That's all. And where in the name of God will you be? I'll be there." Somto paused. "But not as myself. As what?" "As one of the security men." There was a clattering sound as though Danjuma had sat up too fast and knocked something over. "Oga, this thing has passed ordinary stubbornness. This is a sickness. Listen to me. If she is proud, she will only show it when she thinks nobody important is watching. The waiters, the cleaners, the security, that is where the truth lives. People show you who they are by how they treat the people they think cannot reward them." "And if she is actually a nice person?" Somto's face changed in the dark. He did not answer immediately. "Rich girls are never nice when they think you are beneath them," he finally said. "Oga, you have not even met this one. I don't need to meet her to know the type. But you don't like it when people judge you because of your own money. You complain about it every single day." Somto looked at the wall. Danjuma had said something true, and Somto was not in the mood to accept a true thing. "Just do what I asked," he said. "Wear something clean. I'll send a suit, and send me your shoe size. Please send shoe too, sir. If I wear my own shoe to that place, your family name will fall on the floor before I even open my mouth." Somto laughed in spite of himself. But his mind was already on Friday, already setting the trap. He had no idea the girl was setting one of her own. On Friday evening, the hotel lounge was dressed up the way hotels dress up when they know money is coming. Soft yellow lights, wide chairs the color of cream, fresh flowers on every table, the kind that are changed before they ever get the chance to die. Quiet music moved through the room like a careful waiter. The staff smiled their careful smiles, because word had gone round that important guests were expected. At the entrance, Sergeant Bala was arranging his men. Bala was a broad, middle-aged man with watchful eyes and the unhurried manner of someone who had spent 20 years watching people give themselves away. He believed deep in his bones that no human being could hide for long. "Watch them at the edges," he always said. "The truth leaks out at the edges. Stand well," he told his men. "Today is not the day to behave anyhow. Big people are coming." Yes, sir, it was at that moment that Somto arrived. In a security uniform that fit him entirely too well, he had not simply walked in off the street. He was not that reckless. 3 days earlier, he had quietly reached one of the hotel's admin staff through Danjuma, a man named Femi who owed Danjuma a favor and could be trusted to keep a small secret for a reasonable amount of money. Femi had logged Somto in as a temporary evening officer, real name withheld, paperwork conveniently thin. So when Bala stopped him at the door, there was at least a story underneath the lie. "You, new officer, stop there." Bala looked him up and down. "Who sent you?" "Mr. Femi, from admin, sir." "Evening shift." Bala's eyes narrowed. The shirt was too clean. The boots were too new. The haircut was too sharp, and the wristwatch, the man had forgotten to take off the wristwatch, was worth more than a security guard's whole month. "You don't carry yourself like security," Bala said slowly. "How does security carry itself, sir?" "Too much confidence is not good for a new boy." Bala held his gaze a second longer than was comfortable, then pointed. "Go and stand near the restaurant entrance. Don't talk to the guests unless they talk to you first, Hurst." "Yes, sir." Somto moved off. Bala watched his back and something in his chest itched. But there were 40 other things to manage and only one of him, so he let it go. For now. A few minutes later, the real performance arrived. Danjuma stepped out of a hired car wearing Somto's suit. The suit fit, that was not the problem. The problem was that Danjuma did not fit the suit. He kept tugging the sleeves and touching the collar like the cloth was slowly strangling him. As he crossed the lobby, he muttered to himself like a man saying his last prayers. "Danjuma, today you are a billionaire. Walk like money. Do not disgrace yourself. Do not disgrace this innocent suit." "Good evening, sir," a waiter said, gliding over. "Reservation?" "Yes, Eze. Right this way, Mr. Eze. Your guest has not yet arrived. Please sit. Can I get you something while you wait?" Danjuma lowered himself into the chair the way a man lowers himself onto a chair he is not sure will hold him. "Bring me the drink that rich people drink." "Sparkling water, sir." "Champagne." "The second one." "The first one." Danjuma cleared his throat and recovered his dignity. "Bring me sparkling water. I am watching my health." "Of course, sir." From across the room, Somto saw all of this and had to fix his eyes on the wall to keep from laughing. Danjuma was already sweating into a 500,000 naira jacket. At the back of the hotel near the staff entrance, a Deyes arrived dressed as a cleaner. A hard-faced supervisor met her with a clipboard and zero patience. Are you the new evening cleaner?" "Yes, ma. You are late." "Sorry, ma. Don't sorry me. Sorry yourself. Take that mop." She pointed at a bucket on wheels parked against the wall. "You will work the main lounge, clear used glasses, wipe spilled drinks fast before anybody slips. Do not stand around looking lost like a goat in a new compound. And do not," she leaned in, "do not disturb the guests. Speak only when you are spoken to. This place is not for slow people. Move." Diezi said nothing. She had come to play a role, and she had told herself she was ready for it. But the supervisor's voice, the casual cruelty of it, the way she did not even bother to make eye contact while insulting her, touched something Adeze had not expected to feel. These people did not know her. They did not know her father. They did not know the house she had grown up in, the photographs on its walls, the governors and the ministers. And because they did not know, their kindness had simply vanished, like it had never been a real thing in the first place. Like kindness for them was something you only spent on people who could pay it back. She pushed the bucket toward the lounge, and her hands were not quite steady on the handle. It was 7:12 in the evening. She had been cleaning for less than 10 minutes, working her way carefully toward the reserved table, where she could see a nervous man in an expensive suit, when a guest came striding through and clipped her shoulder. The bucket lurched. Grey water sloshed over the rim, and the wet mop swung out and brushed the man's shoe. He stopped like he had been shot. "Are you blind?" He looked down at his shoe, then up at her, and his whole face had reorganized itself into disgust. "Are you actually blind? I'm sorry, sir, you walked into, so now it is my fault." His voice climbed, loud enough that 2 tables turned to watch. "Do you know what this shoe costs? Do you know? More than they pay you in 1 year. Probably than they pay you in 2. They will just pick anybody from the gutter and put a mop in her hand and call her staff. Sir, keep quiet. People like you don't know your place. They let you into a place like this, and immediately you forget yourself." A few feet away, near the restaurant entrance, Somto had gone very still. He had been watching the cleaner since she came in. He did not fully know why. Something in the way she pushed that bucket, too upright, too aware, like a person who had borrowed someone else's life and was trying not to break it. He waited 1 second, expecting the man to run out of steam. The man did not run out of steam. "Look at my shoe," the man barked. "Look at it." Do you even understand the kind of money? She apologized, sir. Somto's voice cut across the lounge, calm and flat. And she did not walk into you, you walked into her. I was watching. The man spun around. Who asked you anything? Nobody. But she did nothing wrong, and you are shouting at her in front of the whole room. Ordinary security guard. The man laughed, ugly and short. You people enjoy putting your mouth in what does not concern you. It concerns me when somebody is being blamed for a thing he did himself. The man drew himself up. Do you know who I am? No, sir. Then you should be very, very careful. You too, sir. For a moment it looked as if the man might explode. But people were watching now, several tables of them, and a man like that cares about an audience the way a fire cares about air. He hissed, jerked his jacket straight, and stormed off toward the bar, muttering. Adeze stood frozen, both hands tight on the mop handle. She looked at the security guard. He had defended her, without knowing who Shishand was, without knowing she had money, without knowing she was the very woman the whole evening had been arranged around. He had not done it for reward. There was no reward to be had from a cleaner. Thank you, she said quietly. He looked at her for the first time, properly. You don't have to thank me for saying the truth. It was a small sentence. But it went into her somewhere, and it stayed. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. Then a glass clinked somewhere, a waiter laughed. The room came back, and Adeze lowered her eyes and went back to her bucket. Somto returned to his post by the entrance, but his eyes followed her once across the room, before he caught himself and looked away. At the reserve table, Danjuma was still waiting for a woman named Adayeze Mbakwe, with no idea that she had just mopped the floor 4 meters from his shoe. Then Chiamaka arrived, and the evening tilted. Chiamaka was Adayeze's cousin, beautiful, stylish, and built entirely for being noticed. She smiled easily and often, and behind every smile was a jealousy she had carried for so many years it had grown into the shape of her face. In the family, the talk was always about Adeze, Adeze's beauty, Adeze's future, Adeze's father's money. Chiamaka had spent her whole life being the cousin, standing slightly behind, in slightly less expensive shoes, in photographs nobody framed. She had heard about the meeting, and she had decided to come and see this Somtochukwu Eze for herself. When Danjuma saw her cross the lounge toward the reserved area, the flashy dress, the careful hair, the bag that cost real money, his back straightened. This, he decided, had to be the girl. This had to be Adeze. Chiamaka saw the suit, the reserved table, the way the waiters orbited the man, and she made the same simple mistake in the opposite direction. This had to be Somto. Good evening, she said, sliding into the seat across from him. Good evening, please. Sit, you are welcome. Danjuma waved at the chair she was already in. I'm here, she said, smiling. I can see waiting is part of life. Chiamaka studied him. He was less polished than she had expected from the ease name. But money, she reminded herself, hides many things, and some rich men enjoy acting simple to test you. She leaned forward, lowered her voice into something soft and confidential. Can I be honest with you? Because I think you should know what you are getting into. Honesty is good, Danjuma said, nodding sagely. Honesty is very good. 2 tables away, Adeze had drifted close, wiping a perfectly clean surface, her ears wide open. I am very, very close to Adeze, Chiamaka said. Like a sister. Closer than a sister, she let that settle. So believe me when I tell you the truth about her. She can be difficult. She is used to getting her way in everything. She is spoiled. I say it with love, but she is spoiled. Proud. Stubborn. Too protected. Her father has carried her on his head her whole life, and now no man is good enough for her. Danjuma leaned back, trying very hard to look like a man who had options. I don't like a woman who is too difficult. A man like me needs peace. Exactly. Peace. That is exactly what you need. Me, I cannot be chasing a woman up and down. If she wants me, fine. If she does not want me, also fine. There are many women. Danjuma spread his hands as though displaying an invisible warehouse of women. Adeze, wiping her clean table, felt her chest tighten. But it was not pain. It was something colder and more satisfying. So this was Somtochukwu Eze, proud, shallow, full of himself, sitting there while a woman insulted her to his face. Agreeing, nodding, talking about his many options. She had been right. She had been right about all of them, and here was the proof. She wrung the cloth and went back to work, her face calm, her plan complete. But near the entrance, the real Somto was watching her. He had seen her drift toward the reserved table. He had seen the exact moment her face changed. The small flinch, the way she lowered her head after the man at the table laughed. And he could not understand why a cleaner would look wounded by a conversation that had nothing at all to do with her. So there they were. Danjuma at the table, pretending to be a man he was not. Chiamako across from him, pretending to be a loving sister while quietly poisoning Adese's name. Adese on her feet with a mop, certain she had just seen the true face of the man she was meant to marry. And Somto by the door, in a borrowed uniform, certain he was the only person in the entire room wearing a disguise. Not one of them knew the truth. Not one. The evening ended the way badly arranged things end, with everyone believing something that was not true. "You have done enough for today," the supervisor told Adese near closing. "Drop the mop and the bucket on your way out. Go through the staff side." "Yes, ma. Thank you." Adese picked up her small bag and walked toward the staff corridor. Her mind was busy and almost calm. She had seen enough. The man at the table was proud and shallow. He had listened to Chiamako insult her and had simply nodded along. The meeting had failed exactly the way she had wanted it to fail, which was the safest, most useless kind of victory there is. But one thing sat wrong with her: the security guard. She was still turning him over in her mind when her slipper, cheap and borrowed like everything else she wore that night, caught on the smooth floor near the back exit. Her foot slid. She lost her balance and the world tipped. And then a hand closed around her arm and pulled her back upright before she could go down. She looked up. It was him, the guard. For a moment neither of them said anything. "Sorry," he said, letting go of her arm carefully, like he was returning something borrowed. "Are you hurt?" "No. My slipper just cut." She lifted her foot. The thin strap had snapped clean through. "You can't walk far on that. I'll manage. People always say that when they have no better option." She almost smiled. He crouched, took the broken slipper from her hand without asking, and looked at the snapped strap the way a man looks at a problem he intends to solve. From his pocket, he produced a small roll of black tape, the kind security men carry for 100 small emergencies, and he wound it tight around the strap, firm and neat, and handed it back. "Try it now." She slid her foot in. It held. "Thank you," she said again, and this time the word felt heavier in her mouth. "You thank people too much," but he said it gently. "And you act like good things are nothing." She studied his face in the dim corridor light. "What is your name?" "Somto," he said. Then, after the smallest pause, "Sergeant Somto." He had given his own first name. He did not know why he did it. It just came out, the true thing wrapped inside the false title, and once it was out, he let it stand. "And you?" "Chioma," she said. It was the first name that came to her, a name that belonged to no one she knew, which was exactly why it was safe. "Nice to meet you, Chioma." He nodded toward the broken floor where she had slipped. "Do you like the job?" "It teaches me things." "Like what?" "How people behave when they think you are invisible." She heard herself say it and could not stop. When they think you have nothing to give them. When they think you don't matter, you learn very fast who a person really is. Somto was quiet for a second. "People behave differently when they think you have nothing to," he said. "This kind of work, it gives a man plenty of time to watch people." "You're right." She did not know it, but they were both telling the exact same truth from opposite sides of the same lie. "I should go. Will you be fine?" "Yes." She started down the corridor, walking carefully on the taped slipper. Somto watched her until she reached the staff gate and disappeared through it into the dark. And then he stood there longer than he needed to, thinking about a cleaner named Chioma, wondering why a woman with nothing carried herself like a woman who had once had everything. That night in the Mbakwe house, Chief Ikena heard that the meeting had not gone well. He sat in his parlor with his phone in his hand and embarrassment in his chest because Chief Okwudili had called him, and the call had been short and cold and full of the kind of polite words proud men use when they are angry. "What happened today?" he asked when Adese came in. "I met him." She set her own phone down. "He is not serious, Daddy." "What do you mean, not serious?" He sat there talking about women like they were lined up waiting for him. He didn't look like a man who is ready for anything that matters. "Did you go there with an open mind? You told me to meet him. I met him. Did you behave yourself?" Adese looked away. "So if the meeting failed, it is automatically my fault. I know you, Adese." Her father's voice was tired more than angry now. "When you do not want a thing, you have learned how to make it fail without ever raising your voice. You can poison a whole evening with a quiet face." She did not answer, because he was not entirely wrong, and that was the part that closed her throat. "I have told you what I saw," she said finally. "This is embarrassing. I'm sorry you're embarrassed. But I cannot marry a proud man because you and his father play golf together." He looked at her for a long moment, like he wanted to say something gentler, and could not find where he had kept it. Go and rest, he said, and in the Ezi house the same scene was playing out in different chairs. You did not even meet the girl, Chief Okwadili said. I met enough. What does that mean, you met enough? It means the evening confirmed what I already knew. Arranged marriage is foolishness, Daddy. You cannot select a wife for a man the way you select a business partner. Don't talk like a child. I'm not a child. I am a grown man asking to choose the woman I will spend my life with. Is that the crime? Somto Chukwu is from a good family, his mother put in. She is from a good family. Good background, good name. Somto's voice rose. That is all anybody can say. What about the person herself? Has anyone in this whole arrangement asked who she actually is? His father stood. You will meet her again. Again? Yes. This time no hotel, no confusion. Both families, in one of the houses. We will sit down properly and end this embarrassment like adults. So instead of letting it die, you want to make it stronger. You are my son. You will not make a fool of me twice. Somto turned to the window so they would not see his face. Because here was the strange thing, the thing he could not say to either of them. He was angry, yes, but underneath the anger, he was not thinking about Ade Mbakwe at all. He was thinking about a cleaner named Kioma, and a taped slipper, and a voice that said, you learn very fast who a person really is. For the next several days, the two of them found small reasons to meet. It started with a returned earring. Kioma had lost a cheap stud near the staff gate, and Sergeant Somto had it, and returning it required meeting. After that, the reasons stopped pretending to be reasons. They met by a roadside vendor near the hotel, where a woman roasted corn and plantain over a drum of glowing coals. He bought 2 cobs, and they sat on the low concrete edge of a culvert and talked while the city moved past them, loud and ordinary, and not watching them at all. Tell me about you, he said one evening. I live with family. It's complicated. Mine too. What is complicated about yours? They have plans for my life, she said. Plans they made without asking me. They love the daughter they can show people, the one who smiles and obeys and marries well and makes them proud. Sometimes I think they love her so much they forgot there is a real person standing inside her. He was quiet. That is the most familiar thing anybody has said to me in a long time. And yours? They believe love should obey instructions. He gave a short laugh. Like you can issue a memo and the heart will comply. They both laughed then, and the laughter was real, which was the strangest part of the whole thing, that 2 people telling each other half-truths could arrive at something so completely true. But Somto, even while he laughed, was watching. He had not stopped being who he was. He noticed that Kioma was careful about where she let him walk her. She always stopped him at the same corner 2 streets before wherever she actually lived. She never named the street. She steered him away from certain roads the way you steer a child away from a hot pot, smoothly, so he would not notice. And she spoke too well. Her grammar was too clean for a cleaner. When she forgot to be careful, her words came out polished, educated, expensive. He told himself he was imagining it. And Adeze, for her part, was watching him right back. She noticed that he did not move like a man who had been pushed around all his life. He carried himself too calmly, took up space too easily, said thank you to the corn seller like a man accustomed to being served rather than serving. When she pointed it out once, gently, joking, he covered it smoothly. I have walked around rich people long enough to catch their habits, he said. You hear and see plenty as security. Their children talk in front of you like you are a wall. After enough years, some of it rubs off. It made sense. She let it go. One evening, he decided to test her properly. You look worried today, he said. Is everything okay? My mother has not been well. She had prepared this in case it was ever useful. There are hospital bills. That is part of why I work so hard. People look down on this kind of job, but a person has to do what she can for her family. How much, if you don't mind me asking? She hesitated. The last bill was 318,000. 318,750 naira to be exact. I keep the exact number in my head. I don't know why. It helps me somehow to know the exact shape of the thing I am fighting. Somto reached into his pocket. He had cash on him, plenty of it. Please, take this. It won't solve everything, but it can help a little. No, why not? Because I did not tell you so that you would give me money. Her voice was firm, almost offended. Besides, you are a security man. You must be struggling too. I cannot take from somebody who is also fighting. He put the money away, slowly, and something in his chest shifted that he had not given it permission to shift. She was watching him just as closely. She had told the story partly to see what he would do. Would he grab the chance to look big? Would he become greedy or proud or start acting like helping her made him her owner? He had done none of those things. He had simply offered and accepted no and put it away. "Thank you," she said. "For what? You didn't even take it. For not making me feel small." He looked at her in the orange light of the coals. "You are not small," he said. Neither of them knew what to do with the silence that came after that. Ifeoma was the first to say the thing out loud. "You like him, I don't. Adaze. I have known you since you were 19. You like this man. This is not a test anymore. The test ended days ago. Now you are just a woman lying to a man you like, which is the worst kind of trouble a person can build for herself." They were in Adize's room. Adize was sitting on the floor with her back against the bed, which is where she always sat when the truth had become too heavy for chairs. "If I truly like him," Ifeoma went on more gently, "and I think you do, then tell him. Tell him who you are before somebody else does it for you. Because if he finds out from a stranger, it will not be a confession. It will be an ambush, and no man forgives an ambush. I'm afraid of what? That the moment he learns I'm rich, he'll change. They all change. He'll start being careful with me, or he'll start calculating, or he'll just look at me the way everyone else looks at me, like a building they want the keys to." She pressed her palms against her eyes. "Right now he looks at me like I am a person. Do you know how long it's been since a man looked at me like I am just a person? And what if he is the one man who wouldn't change? You will never know because you are too busy protecting yourself to find out." Ifeoma crouched in front of her. "Love cannot live in a house built on a lie, Ada. The foundation will crack. It always cracks. The only question is whether you are standing inside when it does." Adaze knew she was right. Her heart had been telling her the same thing for days. But fear is patient and very reasonable, and fear told her, not tonight. Tomorrow, one more day as Kioma, just one. That one delay was all her enemies needed. Because Kiyamaka had not stopped watching. She had seen something at that roadside days before. Driving past in her car, she had glanced out and seen, impossibly, her cousin, Adaze Mbakwe, sitting on a culvert in plain clothes, eating roasted corn beside the security guard from the hotel. She had slowed the car. She had stared. And though she did not understand everything she was seeing, she understood enough to know it was a secret. And Chiamaka had spent her whole life learning that other people's secrets were the only currency she was ever given more of than Adaze. She began to dig. She went back to the hotel on a quiet afternoon, smiling at the staff, pretending to be a curious relative. Before long, she found a cleaner, a tired woman who had worked the floor the night of the blind date, and the woman remembered the new girl, the one who had only worked that single evening. And the woman had a photograph. She had taken it by chance in the staff corridor, a blurry phone picture meant for nothing, and there in the frame, unmistakable, was Adaze in a faded cleaner's uniform, mop in hand. Chiamaka bought the photograph. She did not haggle. Some things are worth their price. Then she called Tabena. Tabena Adeleke was a smooth, handsome, well-spoken man who had been circling Adaze for nearly 2 years. In front of elders, he lowered his voice and became the most respectful young man in any room. But Adaze had always felt the cold machinery turning behind his smile, and she had refused him so many times and so clearly that even her father had stopped suggesting him. Almost. They met that evening in a quiet lounge. "So it is true," Tabena said, looking at the photograph on Chiamaka's phone. "Chief Mbakwe's only daughter, dressed as a cleaner." In public, he set the phone down slowly, and his smile when it came was not a nice one. "Wonderful. I want people to see her," Chiamaka said. "Just for once. I want them to see that the greater Diazi is not as perfect as everybody decides she is." But Tabena's mind had already traveled far past Chiamaka's small jealousy and arrived somewhere much larger. He was thinking about Chief Ikena Mbakwe's company. He was thinking about a private investment deal worth 11,400,000 naira that he had heard whispers of. A deal that required board approval, that required signatures, that required access. He had been quietly cultivating a friendship with a junior finance officer in Mbakwe's company for months, asking small questions, building small bridges. Marriage into the family would have been the master key. With Chief Mbakwe's name behind him, doors that took other men 10 years would simply open. But Adaze kept refusing him. And now here was a gift, a way to break her, to shame her, to make her family so grateful for a respectable man, cleaning up the embarrassment that they would hand her over without a fight. "We don't waste this," Tabena said. "We wait for the right room, the right crowd. We let it land where it does the most damage." Chiamaka was acting out of jealousy, Tobena was acting out of greed and patience. Between the two of them, they were certain that public disgrace would break Adeze Mbakwe in half. Neither of them noticed the small thing they had set in motion, that to get the photograph, Tobena had been seen. The corn seller's son, who hung around the hotel running errands, had watched a man in a navy suit hand an envelope to a cleaner outside the staff gate and walk away with a phone in his hand. The boy thought nothing of it. But the boy talked. Everybody talks. The truth leaks out at the edges. Meanwhile, Danjuma stumbled into the truth by pure accident. He had been sent to deliver a document near the high-walled houses of the Mbakwe district. He was walking back to the car, half asleep on his feet, when a gate opened across the road and a woman came out, dressed in a soft, expensive dress, climbing into the back of a chauffeured car. He glanced at her the way you glance at anybody. Then he stopped walking. He knew that face. He had picked Oga up from that hotel a dozen times. He had seen the cleaner, Kioma, come and go through the staff gate. He had watched, with a private smile, his Oga slowly falling for a girl who mopped floors. And the woman now folding herself into a chauffeured car outside a mansion with the name MBAKWE on the gatepost was the same woman. Danjuma did not believe his own eyes. So he stood there until the car pulled out and he saw her clearly through the window, and there was no doubt left to hide behind. He went back to Somto almost running. Oga, what is wrong with you, that girl? Kioma, the cleaner. Danjuma was out of breath. She is not a cleaner. Danjuma, if this is one of your jokes. I saw her today, sir, coming out of a house in the Mbakwe area, dressed like a rich woman, entering a chauffeur car. The gate said Mbakwe. He swallowed. Oga, what if your Chioma is Adeze Mbakwe, the same girl your father has been forcing on you? What if she is the same person? The name landed in the room like a slap, and for a moment Somto could not speak. His first feeling was anger, hot and immediate. She had played him. She had dressed as a cleaner to test him, to look down at him from behind a costume, to study him like an insect under glass. But the anger lasted only a few seconds, because right behind it came the other thought, and the other thought was worse. He had done the exact same thing. He had worn a security uniform. He had let her believe he was an ordinary man who fixed broken slippers with black tape. He had invented a test, watched her like a specimen, even tried to trap her with the offer of money. What right, exactly, did he have to feel betrayed? What made his lie cleaner than hers? Nothing. Nothing at all. And yet it hurt. And it hurt precisely because the feeling underneath the lie had stopped being a test a long time ago. The feeling was real now. The lie had become a wound. What will you do? Danjuma asked, watching him carefully. I should confront her. Somto stared at the wall. But I won't. Not yet. Why not, sir? Because if it is true, I want to understand why she lied, before I decide what it means. He was quiet for a moment. And because I am not in a strong position to be pointing fingers at anybody about lying. Small, sir, Danjuma agreed. Very small position, microscopic, in fact. That night, Somto sat alone with his phone in his hand for a long time. Kioma's number glowed on the screen. Or perhaps it was Adese's number. He no longer knew whose number he was holding. For the first time since they met, he wanted to call her and had absolutely no idea what he would say. Across the city, Adese was doing the very same thing. Sitting on her bed, phone beside her, staring at the contacts saved as Somto, her thumb hovering and retreating, hovering and retreating. She wanted to hear his voice. She wanted to tell him everything, and every time she got close, the fear stepped neatly in front of her and said, tomorrow. So they both waited, and the families who did not know any of this set the trap that would catch them both. Chief Ikena and Chief Okwudili agreed to hold a formal family dinner. It was not officially an engagement, but it was dressed like one, and everybody understood the difference was only a matter of weeks. Both families would gather, eat, smile, and bury the embarrassment of the failed meeting under good food and better wine. The Mbakwe dining hall was prepared for 31 guests. Adese counted them on the seating list because counting gave her hands something to do. She had not told her father the truth. She had not told anyone except Ifeoma, and Ifeoma had begged her, that very afternoon, to confess before the dinner. Tonight, Ifeoma had said, before you sit at that table, pull your father aside, or pull Somto aside if he comes, and tell the truth with your own mouth. I am begging you, do not let this night arrive with the lie still standing. After dinner, Adese had said. I'll tell him after. I can't ruin the whole evening for both families. It was the last delay she would ever get to choose. The guests arrived in waves of perfume and laughter. Chief Okwudili and Mrs. Adaobi came with the particular grace of people who have decided to be gracious. Mama Ngozi installed herself near the head of the table like a second host. Servers moved with trays. The chandelier threw soft light over everything. Then Somto walked in and Adeyes stopped breathing. He was dressed exactly the way the world expected the heir to the E's fortune to be dressed. Clean, tailored, calm, expensive. The man everybody had been waiting for at the first failed meeting. And his face was the face of Sergeant Somto, the security guard. The man who had taped her slipper and bought her roasted corn and told her she was not small. Her Somto, but not a security guard. Somto Chukwu Eze, the very man she had been running from since the beginning. He saw her at the same instant, even though Danjuma had warned him, even though he had known for days. Seeing her stand there in fine clothes as Adeyes Mbakwe still went through him like cold water. She was no longer Kioma in a faded uniform. She was the woman the entire dinner had been built around, and she was looking at him with her whole face open in shock. They stared at each other across the crowded hall. Neither moved, neither spoke. There were too many people, and too many smiles, too many eyes, so their own eyes had to carry the whole conversation. Her eyes said, "You?" His eyes answered. "And you, Adeyes," her father's voice cut through. "Come and greet our guests properly." She came forward on legs that did not feel like her own. "Good evening, you are welcome." "Good evening," Somto said. His voice was steady. Only she could hear the thing trembling underneath it. For one suspended moment it seemed possible that they might find a way, a stolen second in a corridor, a whispered the truth, a chance to disarm the lie together before it went off. They did not get the moment, because Tobena arrived. Chief Ikenna frowned slightly when he saw him. Tobena had not been on any list he remembered approving, but Tobena moved through the room, greeting elders with such smooth respect that the frown smoothed itself out. Chiamaka slipped in a few minutes behind him, and when Adeyes saw the two of them enter together, one after the other, a cold thread of dread pulled tight in her stomach. Dinner had not even been served when Tobena rose to his feet. "Chief Mbakwe, forgive me, sir." His voice carried, trained and clear, pitched to reach the far end of the table. "I know this is not my place, but there is something I believe both of these great families deserve to know before they bind themselves together." The room quieted. Forks paused. "What is it?" Chief Ikenna asked. "Your daughter has not been honest with anyone in this room." Tobena. Adeyes was on her feet. "Don't." He did not even look at her. "On the night of the arranged meeting at the hotel, this same Adeyes, this daughter you are about to give in marriage, was there. But not as a guest." He let the silence stretch. A man who understood the value of a pause. She was there dressed as a cleaner, in a uniform, mopping the floor, watching everybody like a spy in her own father's arrangement. A murmur ran around the table. "I saw her myself," Chiamaka added, rising, her voice shaking with something she was pretending was concern. "She went there disguised as a poor cleaner, to watch us, to mock all of us." She held up her phone, and on the bright screen was the photograph, Adeyes, unmistakable, in the faded uniform, mop in hand. She passed it to the nearest guest, and it began its slow, poisonous journey down the table, hand to hand. "What kind of childish, disgraceful behavior is this?" Mama Ngozi's voice rose above the murmur. "A whole Mbak daughter, dressing like a laborer to deceive a serious family." Adeyes' throat had gone completely dry. "Daddy, I can explain." "You disgraced us." Chief Ikenna had risen now too, and his face was a terrible mixture of anger and humiliation, the face of a proud man being shamed in his own house. "You put on a servant's uniform and turned a serious matter into a game. In front of these people, in front of the Ease family. It was not to mock anyone. Then what was it?" "She wanted to test everybody," Chiamaka cut in. "She wanted to play noble and pure while she was the one being false." And then Somto stepped forward. "Enough." Every head turned to him. Tobena's eyes sharpened with interest. "You should not rush to defend her, my friend," he said softly. "It is strange. Why does a man defend a woman so quickly the night he is supposed to be meeting her for the first time?" The question hung in the air, and Chiamaka, who had been watching everything, who missed nothing where Adeyes was concerned, suddenly turned her head toward the back of the hall, toward a man who had been standing quietly near the servers, a man she half recognized and could not place. "Wait," she said slowly. "Wait, that man." She pointed at Danjuma, who had come as part of the Ez entourage and had been trying with limited success to make himself invisible behind a curtain. "I know that face. He was the one. At the hotel. He was the one sitting at the reserve table pretending to be Somtochukwu Eze. He talked to me. He told me about his many options." The whole room turned. "Danjuma," Chief Okudili said very slowly, very quietly, in a voice that had gone dangerous. Is this true? Danjuma looked at the floor like a man hoping it would open and accept him. I'm sorry, Oga. Somtochukwu, his father turned to him. Explain this to me now in front of everyone. And there it was. Both masks, lying on the floor of the hall at the same time. Somto did not run from it. It's true, he said. I sent Danjuma to sit at the table in my place. And I was there myself, as a security guard. I wanted to see the kind of woman she was when she thought nobody important was watching. So, Chief Ikena's voice was ice. Your son came to deceive my family, and my daughter, dressed like staff, to disgrace yours. Two great families, and our children behaved like masquerade actors in a market square. Nobody, Chief Okhudili said heavily, disgraced anybody more than these two children have disgraced themselves tonight. Tobena stood at the center of the wreckage he had made, and he was smiling. It had gone better than he had planned. The shame was total. The families were turning on each other, and in the chaos, a respectable man who had warned them all would look very, very good. But Adeze was looking at the photograph as it reached her father's hand, and then she was looking at Tobena's smile, and then at Chiamaka standing beside him, the two of them together, arriving together, exposing her together. And through the panic and the shame, one cold, clear thought rose up in her mind like a fish breaking water. They planned this. Together. A man does not plan the public destruction of a woman he claims he wants to marry, unless he wants something from her family that has nothing to do with her at all. Everybody, Chief Ikena said, his voice flat and final, should stop. He looked at his daughter, and there was no warmth left in his eyes, only the cold of a deeply wounded man. Adeze, go outside. Now. She went. She did not argue. There was nothing left in the room to argue with. And Somto, before anyone could stop him, followed her out. They stood in the dark garden behind the house, where the noise of the dinner became a distant hum, and the only light came from a single bulb over the back door. Why did you lie to me? She said. He almost laughed, a short, bitter sound. You are asking me that. You. Yes, I'm asking you. Why did you let me believe you were a security guard? For the same reason you let me believe you were a cleaner. He turned to face her. I wanted to be free, to meet a woman who did not know my name, or my account, or my father. I wanted to know if you would respect an ordinary man, a man with nothing. And you wanted to know if I would. We are the same disease, Adeze. We just wore different uniforms. You tested me like an experiment, and you tested me. You let me hold your broken slipper, and you watched me to see if I would become greedy. You told me your mother was sick to see what I would do. 318,750. Was any of that real? She looked away. It had not been real. And the shame of it sat in her chest beside the shame of everything else. I was afraid, she said. So was I. Afraid of what? Of meeting one more rich girl who would look at people like Kioma, like the real Kiomas, the ones who are actually poor, as if they were nothing. His voice dropped. And then I met you, and you were kind to a man you thought had nothing, and I started to think maybe I had been wrong about everybody. And now I find out the kind man's kindness was also a performance. It stopped being a performance, Somto. She said it before she could stop herself. Somewhere in the middle, it stopped. For me. It became real, and I didn't know what to do with it, so I kept lying because the lie was the only place we could both be ordinary. He was quiet for a long time. It stopped being a performance for me too, he said finally. That is the worst part. Maybe the feeling was real, but the foundation was a lie, and I don't know how you build anything on that. I don't know what to do with this. I don't even know what to believe. The noise from the house swelled and then died. Somewhere inside, two families were tearing apart a marriage that had not even begun. And out in the dark garden, two people who had finally told each other the truth stood 3 feet apart, unable to close the distance, because the truth had arrived far too late and far too loud. There is something else, Adie said suddenly, her mind catching up to her heart. Tobena and Chiamaka, they planned tonight together. The photograph, the timing, all of it. Somto, Tobena has been trying to marry me for 2 years, and tonight he stood up and destroyed me in front of everyone. Why would a man do that to a woman he wants? Somto's eyes sharpened, the strategist in him waking up underneath the wound. Because he doesn't want you, he said slowly. He wants something the marriage would have given him. My father's company, she whispered. And in that moment, in the ruins of the worst night of her life, Adeze stopped being only the girl who had been disgraced and started becoming the woman who would find out why. The morning after, nobody in the Mbakwe house spoke freely. The dinner had ended in cold goodbyes and tight faces. And by sunrise, the story was already moving from mouth to mouth across the city the way only shameful stories move, fast and downhill. Chief Ikenna refused breakfast. He sat in his study with the door closed. "This is shameful, Ikenna," Mama Ngozi said, letting herself in. "The phone has not stopped since morning. Everybody is asking. A whole billionaire's daughter, dressing like a cleaner, people are laughing." "Let them laugh," he said, but his voice was tired. When he called Adieze in, he did not shout. That was worse. "You made a fool of me," he said, "and of yourself. And of the Easy family. Do you know what kind of family we have now joined our name to in scandal? Daddy, Somto's own behavior was no better. He sent his assistant to sit in his place. He came as a security guard. We both, and that is supposed to comfort me? That both of you are foolish." Adieze wanted to tell him about Tobena, about the company, about the cold thread she had pulled in the garden. But she had no proof, only a feeling, and a feeling was exactly the kind of thing her father had stopped trusting from her. So she kept it, folded it away, and carried it to the only people who might help her open it. It was Ifeoma who started pulling the thread. She had never trusted Tobena, not for a single day. After the dinner, she went to Chiamaka, not with anger, but with the quiet patience of a woman who has decided to win. She found Chiamaka shrunken and uneasy, the high of the public revenge already curdling into something that felt less like triumph and more like guilt. "You hurt your own cousin," Ifeoma said, "in front of the whole world. For what? Because everybody always praised her, and never you." Chiamaka's eyes filled. "You don't understand. Then make me understand." And it came out, all of it. The years of standing slightly behind. The photographs nobody framed. The way the family said Adieze's name like a blessing and hers like an afterthought. But more than that, under Ifeoma's steady questions, the other thing came out too. The thing Chiamaka had not fully understood she was part of. "Tobena," Chiamaka whispered. "He didn't just want to shame her. He kept asking me things, about her father's business, about the contracts, about who signs what. I thought he was just interested. I thought he loved her in his own twisted way." She wiped her face. "I think I helped him do something much bigger than I wanted to." "Then help me undo it," Ifeoma said. "Send me everything, every message he sent you. Everything he asked." Chiamaka hesitated only a moment. Then she opened her phone and began to forward months of conversations, and with each message that left her phone, something in her face loosened, as though she were setting down a weight she had been pretending was not heavy. Danjuma was the second to bring a peace. After the disaster, Danjuma had become watchful in a way that surprised even Somto. He felt responsible. He had sat at that table. He had talked to Chiamaka. He had, in his own small way, helped build the trap that caught his ogre. So he kept his eyes open, and one afternoon, outside a small office building near the financial district, he saw Tobena again. Tobena was standing with a man Danjuma recognized, a junior finance officer from Chief Mbakwe's company, a man Danjuma had seen at a company event once, holding a clipboard and looking nervous. As Danjuma watched, Tobena handed the man a thick envelope. The man handed back a brown file. They shook hands and parted quickly, the way men part when they do not want to be remembered together. Danjuma did not know what was in the file, but he knew what a bribe looked like, and he recorded 10 seconds of shaky video from across the street. Sergeant Bala was the third and the most unexpected. Bala had never forgotten the too clean security guard from the night of the blind date, nor the well-dressed cousin who had come around the hotel afterward asking strange questions, nor the man in the navy suit who had waited outside the staff gate for her. He had filed all of it away in the careful drawers of his mind. So when word reached him, and in this city word reaches everyone, that there had been a great scandal at the Mbakwe dinner involving a disguised cleaner and a man in a navy suit named Tobena, the drawers slid open and the pieces lined up. Bala had something the others did not. He had the hotel's security footage from the night of the blind date, and on that footage, clear and time-stamped, was Tobena Adeleke, outside the staff gate, receiving a phone from a cleaner and handing over money. The very transaction that had produced the photograph. He did not have to help. It was not his trouble. But Bala had spent 20 years watching the powerful insult the powerless and walk away clean, and something in him had been waiting a long time for a night like this. "This kind of man smiles too much," he told Ifeoma when she came to him. "And the ones who smile too much are the ones you watch the closest." Ifeoma brought the three pieces together and laid them in front of Adeyes. Chiamaka's months of messages, Danjuma's 10 seconds of video, Bala's time-stamped footage. Adeyes went cold as she watched them line up into a single shape. This Tobena is even worse than I thought, she said quietly. And this is only what we can see. Ifuma, we take this to my father. Not as my feeling, as evidence. This time, Chief Ikenna did not wave his daughter away. He sat at his desk and watched the video, read the messages, studied the footage, and his face changed slowly from disbelief to something much harder. Send Mr. Okafor to my study, he said to his aide. Now. And I want a full internal finance check. Every contract this Tobena's name has come near, every approval. Quietly. Today. Here is the part the gossips never understood, the part that mattered more than the scandal. A man like Tobena had not planned to steal money outright. He was cleverer than that. He had been working to manufacture authority. Through the junior officer he had cultivated, he had been preparing forged documents, false board approvals, signatures that would make it appear Chief Ikenna had personally authorized the 11,400,000 naira investment deal, a deal Chief Ikenna had never approved and barely knew about. If the marriage had gone through, Tobena would have had the family standing to push those forged papers through without anyone looking twice. The marriage was not the prize. The marriage was the door. By the next day, the internal check had found it all. 8 unauthorized documents. 2 forged approvals bearing a signature that was almost, but not quite, Chief Ikenna's hand. The reason it failed, the reason it had always been going to fail, was something most people never think about, and it is worth understanding. Real companies do not let one signature move millions. They build what auditors call dual authorization. Large decisions require 2 independent approvals, logged separately, so that no single forged hand can move the money alone. And they run internal audits precisely to catch the gap between what a document claims and what actually happened. Tobena had been clever about the forgery. He had not been clever about the system. The system was built, brick by boring brick, by people who had learned long ago that the most dangerous thief is the one who looks respectable. The boredom of the safeguard is the point of the safeguard. When Tobena was summoned to the Mbakwe house, he came smiling, certain he was still in control. Chief, good afternoon. You called for me, sir. Stand there, Tobena. Sir, whatever you have heard, people are trying to spoil my name because I care about Adayeze. You never cared about my daughter. Chief Ikenna's voice did not rise. It did not need to. You cared about what her hand in marriage would put in your reach. He turned a laptop around. On the screen, the time-stamped footage played. Tobena, the staff gate, the envelope, the phone. This is from the hotel cameras. The date is correct. It happened. For the first time, the smile slipped off Tobena's face and did not climb back on. I welcomed you into my house, Chief Ikenna said. I almost listened to you. I almost handed you my daughter as a key to my company, because you wore a clean suit and lowered your voice in front of elders. He looked for one moment, profoundly tired. Send in the officers. They are waiting outside. They had been waiting outside. That was the last time Tobena Adeleke came near the Mbakwe name. The forged documents became a financial crimes investigation. The junior officer, faced with the footage and his own signature, told everything in exchange for mercy. And the great respectable man who had stood up at a dinner to shame a woman for wearing a uniform was led out of that house by people whose names he had never bothered to learn. That evening, Chief Ikenna asked his daughter to sit with him alone. Adaze, I owe you an apology. Daddy, no, let me finish, because I have practiced it and I will lose it if you talk. He folded his hands. I told myself for 20 years that I was protecting you, but sometimes I was only controlling you and calling it protection, because protection is the nicer word. When Tobena came, I almost listened, because he looked the way I think a serious man should look. I almost gave you to a thief because the thief had good manners. He looked at her. Your disguise was foolish. I will not pretend it was wise. But you were running from something real. You were running from me deciding your whole life while telling you it was love. I know you were trying to protect me, Adaze said. Her voice was not steady. But protection without listening feels exactly like control. From inside, they are the same prison. You are right. 3 words she had never once heard from him in that order. I am sorry. The Ease family came to a quieter version of the same reckoning. Mrs. Adobe found her son one evening sitting at the window, doing nothing, which he had been doing a great deal of. I judged that girl, she said, sitting beside him, when I thought she was a cleaner. When Danjuma let it slip that you were running around with a cleaner, I was ready to disown the idea entirely. But she was not really a cleaner, Mummy. That is not the lesson, Somto. She said it slowly, like she was surprising herself by understanding it. The lesson is that even if Kioma had truly been a poor cleaner, she still deserved respect. If she had been exactly what she pretended to be, with nothing, no name, no father, would she have deserved to be treated like dirt? That is the question I got wrong. Not whether she was rich underneath, whether it should have mattered. Somto looked at his mother for a long moment. "I'm glad you see that," he said. "I am sorry I did not see it sooner. It would be a lie to say the two of them simply fell back together. They did not. The wound was real, and they were careful with each other for a long time, the way you are careful with a thing that has already broken once. But they began again. No cleaner's uniform, no security uniform, no performance for any family. They went on small, ordinary dates, the kind that cost nothing and prove everything. And one evening, Somto took her back to the roadside, to the same corn cellar, to the same low concrete edge of the same culvert where Sergeant Somto had once handed Kioma a cob of roasted corn and told her she was not small. "I met you when both of us were pretending," he said, turning the corn over in his hands. "But the part of you I fell in love with was the part that was real. Your stubbornness, your kindness to a man you thought had nothing, the way you would not take money you needed because you would not let me feel poor." He looked at her. "I don't want a perfect love nowadays. I have watched perfect arrangements my whole life, and they are made of glass. I want an honest one. I want to build something we don't have to test each other to trust. I want you, not Kioma, not Chief Mbakwe's daughter. You. Will you marry me?" She did not make him wait. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Somto." The wedding came months later, simple by the standards of two families that have rented a stadium. Both families were present, but this time nobody was commanding anything. They had come to support, not to direct. Danjuma cried during the toast and announced, to anyone who would listen, that he had once been a billionaire's son for a single evening and would like it noted in the family history. Bala, retired now from the hotel, came in his best agbada and shook Somto's hand and told him he was still the most handsome fake security guard he had ever caught. Kiamaka came too, quieter than anyone had ever seen her, and before the night ended, she found Adieze alone. "I'm sorry," she said. "I was jealous for so long I forgot you were my blood." "I know," Adeze said. "I forgive you, but you have to change. Not for me, for yourself. Jealousy is a fire that only ever burns the person carrying it." "I'm trying," Kiamaka said, and for once it sounded true. Mama Ngozi cried during her own unrequested speech and declared that she had always known love would find its way, which made the entire room turn and look at her, because she had personally supplied at least half the pressure that nearly destroyed it. She wiped her eyes and lifted her chin. What? At least it worked out. A wise woman is allowed to forget her mistakes. But here is the part of the story I most want you to keep, the part that is not about a wedding at all. After they married, Somto and Adeze did something that confused a great many people who only understood weddings, and not what comes after them. In both family companies, they started a workers' dignity program. Not a charity photo op, not a press release, but a real thing with real teeth. It was for the people who keep everything running and are almost never thanked for it. The cleaners, the security men, the drivers, the cooks, the messengers, the office assistants. The invisible architecture of every rich person's comfortable day. They did not run it from a distance. They visited, they listened to complaints that powerful people are usually protected from ever hearing. "Madam," one cleaner told Adeze, "when we mop the floor, some of the staff walk on it before it is dry, and they do not even say sorry. Like we are not there." "Sir," another said, "sometimes our salary is late for many days and nobody tells us why. We are just expected to wait." Adieze did not nod vaguely and move on. She sat down. And then she did the thing that mattered. She did not only feel for them, she informed them. She brought in someone to explain to every worker, in plain language, the rights they actually had under the law. That wages withheld, without explanation, were not a favor being delayed, but an entitlement being denied. That there were proper channels to report bullying and unsafe conditions. That dignity at work was not a gift from a kind boss, but something a person could stand on and ask for by name. Knowledge, she had learned the hard way, is the difference between a person who can be pushed and a person who cannot. You cannot easily disrespect someone who knows exactly what they are owed. By the end of this month, she told them, the late salaries stop. And if anyone treats you as though you are invisible, there is now a name and a desk and a number for that. You are not powerless. You are only uninformed. Those are not the same thing. Somto, for his part, never forgot the way the staff looked through him when they thought he was only security. Adazes never forgot the casual cruelty of the supervisor, who would not even meet her eyes. They had both learned the same thing from opposite sides of the same lie, and it was this: kindness is only real when it costs you something and earns you nothing. It is easy to respect a person in an expensive suit. It is easy to smile at someone who can promote you. Character, the actual thing, not the performance of it, only ever shows in how a person treats the people who cannot reward them, cannot promote them, cannot defend themselves loudly. The waiter, the cleaner, the stranger with nothing to offer. And the years passed after that, not in dramatic chapters, but in quiet evenings, the kind of quiet two people have to nearly lose each other to learn how to keep. I want to tell you something before I let you go, and it is not part of the story. When I was much younger, I spent one long, broke summer working night security at a building I will not name. 12 hours a shift, a plastic chair, a torch with a weak battery. And what I remember most is not the boredom or the cold. It is how quickly people learned to look through me. Important men in good suits would pass my desk every morning for months and never once meet my eyes. As though a uniform were a kind of invisibility, as though the chair were empty. I was 22, and I have never forgotten the exact feeling of becoming furniture. That is why a story like this matters to me, even knowing it is only a story, because the test in it is a real tall test. You are taking it right now, today, with the security man at your gate, and the woman who cleans your office, and the driver who waits hours for you, and is not greeted when you finally come. Nobody important is watching how you treat them. That is exactly what makes it the truest measure of who you are. So let me ask you, wherever you are watching from, who is the invisible person in your own life, and when did you last look them in the eye? Tell me in the comments, I read them. And if this story moved you, share it with one person who needs to be reminded that dignity is not something we hand down to the people beneath us. It is something we owe across to the people beside us. Their love began in disguise, but it survived because, in the end, they finally chose to be honest, with each other and with the world. They called him Ordinary Store Boy. They made him carry their bags, mop their spills, and stand outside in the rain while they laughed from the window. Ifeyinwa told him to his face that he carried the stench of poverty. Chiamaka smiled at him only when senior staff were watching. But on the 90th day, when this same boy in the faded grey uniform walked into the boardroom in a tailored suit and the entire company rose to its feet, the two women who had spent 3 months humiliating him could not lift their eyes from the floor, because the store boy they treated like dirt was Chidubem Okonkwo, the only son of Chief Mrs. Adaze Okonkwo, and the man who owned the very building they were standing in. Only one person had been kind to him when she believed he was nobody. Only one. And what Madame Adaze did next, that woman never saw coming. If a story about respect, karma, and a love that did not need money moves you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below where in the world you are watching from. Now sit back, and let me tell you everything. Chief Mrs. Adaze Okonkwo was not the kind of woman you forgot. She entered her office on the 11th floor every morning at exactly 7:42, and by 7:45, the whole floor had straightened its back. Some people lowered their voices. Some people who had been laughing suddenly found a reason to be serious. She did not ask for this. She had simply lived long enough, and lost enough, that the air around her had learned to behave. She built Greenmark Distribution from one rented warehouse in Aba 26 years ago, with money she borrowed against her wedding jewelry. Her husband, Chief Emmanuel, had believed in it more than he believed in his own health. He used to say, "Ada, a company is not the building. It is how the smallest man inside it is treated." She thought he was being sentimental back then. She did not understand yet that he was leaving her a map. He died on a Tuesday 11 years ago, of a heart that simply stopped. Their son Chidubem was 14. People came to the funeral and held her hand and told her, with their eyes more than their mouths, that the company would not last 2 years without a man at the head. She heard them. She wiped her face in the bathroom of her own house where nobody could see, and then she went back out and shook every hand, and the next morning at 7:42, she was in the office. Greenmark did not fall. It grew. Warehouses in 4 states now. Trucks. Contracts with supermarket chains that used to keep her waiting in their lobbies. But the thing Chief Addy was proudest of was not on any balance sheet. It was a clause, a single paragraph her late husband had written into his will, in his own crooked handwriting, that she had read so many times the paper had gone soft at the folds. That morning she had the paper out on her desk again. Her secretary, Mrs. Bowes, a quiet woman in her 50s who had been with her for 19 years, set down a cup of tea and noticed, "Ma, you are reading Chief's letter again. My son is coming home, Bowes, on Friday." "Ah, thank God. Finally. After how many years?" "5. He finished his master's. He is a man now." A dièse touched the paper. "Chief wrote something here that I have to honor now. Before Dubem can sit in that chair as CEO, he must spend 90 days working inside this company. From the bottom, the lowest position, sweeping, lifting, carrying, and nobody is to know who he is." Mrs. Bowes's mouth opened. "Ma, the owner's son? Carrying load in the store. That is what his father wanted." Adiezi smiled, but it was a sad smile, the kind that has a whole dead man inside it. Emmanuel used to say a person who has never been treated like nothing will treat people like nothing once he has power. He did not want that for our son. So he wrote it, 90 days. If Dubem refuses, the shares go into a trust, and he waits until he is 40. And Dubem agreed. He laughed when I read it to him on the phone. Then he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Mummy, my father was a wiser man than me." She folded the paper. "There is something else. Ma, I am also watching. While he is down there, sweeping floors, I want to see how this company treats a person it thinks is nobody. The real face of this place. The face people only show when they believe nobody important is looking." She turned to the window. "And Bowes, my son is of an age to marry. I will not choose for him. But a man who has been invisible for 90 days will learn something about people that no rich man ever learns. He will see who has a good heart and who only has good manners. There is a difference. There is a big difference, Ma. Only 3 people will know the truth. You, me, and Ikenna." Ikenna was her operations manager. 7 years with the company, the kind of man who said little and noticed everything, who you could hand a secret to and know it would still be intact a decade later. She called him in that same afternoon and told him, and watched his eyes widen and then settle. "Ma, this is risky," Ikenna said. "If anyone recognizes him, nobody will. He left for boarding school at 12 and went straight abroad. His face is not in any company document. The staff who knew him as a small boy have all retired or moved on. Even the photographs in this office are of him at 10 years old, in school uniform with a gap tooth." She almost laughed. "He is 6'1" now with a beard. And the name. Okonkwo is not exactly hidden. He will use Dube, Chidubem Dube. Common enough. There are 1,000 Dubes in this city." She leaned forward. "Ikenna, you will assign him to the warehouse and general store. The lowest grade, temporary intake. You will not protect him. You will not soften anything. If they make him carry, he carries. If they insult him, he swallows it. The only thing you will do is watch and report to me, and step in if only if it becomes genuinely dangerous. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma. Good. Friday he lands. Monday he starts." The private jet touched down on Friday at 4:18 in the afternoon, and Chief Adieze was the one waiting on the tarmac. Not the driver, her. The young man who came down the steps was tall and lean, with his father's jaw and his father's careful way of looking at a thing before he reacted to it. He saw her, and his whole face changed, and he came across the tarmac fast and folded her into his arms. And for a second the chairwoman of Greenmark Distribution was just a mother who had been counting days. "Mummy, Dubem, my Dubem, let me look at you." She held his face. "You have your father's chin. You say that every time we video call, because every time it is more true." She wiped her eye with one knuckle, quick, before it could become anything. "Come, we will talk at home." That night, after he had eaten her juicy soup like a man who had not eaten properly in 5 years, they sat in the parlor, and she put the folded paper on the table between them. He picked it up. He read his father's handwriting in silence. She watched him read it, and she saw the exact moment his throat tightened, and she let him have that moment without saying anything. 90 days, he said at last. 90 days. From Monday. As a store hand. Nobody will know. And you? I will be upstairs. We will not greet each other in public. You will be duped to everyone. Including the cleaners, including the managers, including the girls. What girls? A Daisy smiled and reached for her tea. There are 3 young women in that company I've been watching for some time. Smart, all of them. Educated. Each of them in different ways has let me know she would not mind being close to my son one day. Though they think I do not notice these things. She blew on the tea. Ifeyinwa, in marketing, beautiful, sharp, ambitious. Chiamaka, in administration. Soft-spoken, very correct, very polished. And Amarachi, in inventory control. Quiet, hard-working. The kind of girl who is easy to overlook. Mummy, are you choosing me a wife from a list? No, she said it sharply. I am telling you that the woman who treats Dube the store boy with kindness, when she has every reason to believe he is a nobody who can do nothing for her, that woman has shown you her heart before you ever ask for it. Money will make a person act. Power will make a person act. But how somebody treats a person who can give them nothing that is the truth of them, that is the only test that does not lie. Dubem looked at the paper a long time. My father, he said quietly, was a wiser man than me. Your father, she said, would have liked the man you have become. Now go and sleep. On Monday you stop being his son and become his lesson. Monday morning, 6:30, the Greenmark Central Warehouse on the Industrial Road was already loud with the sound of roller doors and reversing trucks. Doobie, and from here we must call him Doobie, because that is who everyone there saw, arrived in a faded grey work uniform that hung a little loose on him, and a pair of safety boots that had belonged to somebody else first. He carried nothing but a small bag. He looked like any of the 40 young men who passed through that gate every morning, hoping for a day's wage. Ikenna met him at the loading bay, and to his credit, he did not blink. You, new intake? Yes, sir, Dube. Report to Olga Sylvanus at the store. You do what he says. You touch what he tells you to touch. You break something. It comes from your pay. Welcome to Greenmark. And he walked off without a backward glance, and Dube felt, for the first time in his life, the particular nakedness of being a man nobody had any reason to respect. Olga Sylvanus was the store supervisor, a heavy man with a permanent frown, and a clipboard he treated like a weapon. He looked Dube up and down the way you look at a goat at the market. You have done store work before? A little, sir, a little. Sylvanus snorted. Everybody has done a little. Then they break my crates and steal my wage. You see those? He pointed at a wall of cartons, 12 feet high, stacked badly. By 12 o'clock I want them counted, sorted by batch number, and restacked. If one number is wrong, you start again. This is not your father's house. Move. Dube moved. The first morning broke something in his hands and rebuilt it. He had played squash at university. He had carried his own luggage through 6 airports. He had never, not once, lifted 40 cartons for 4 hours straight, while a man with a clipboard told him he was slow. By 10:30, his palms had 2 blisters and a tear. By noon, his shirt was a second skin. He counted 411 cartons. He sorted them by a batch numbering system nobody had explained to him, that he had to reverse engineer from the labels while Sylvanus watched and said nothing helpful. He got it all right. Sylvanus checked, found nothing to punish, and looked almost disappointed. Go and eat. 15 minutes. Then the floor. The staff canteen was a long room with plastic tables and the smell of rice and stockfish. Dube sat at the end of a bench, alone, in his sweat-soaked grey uniform, and ate quickly because 15 minutes is 15 minutes. That was where Versus 4 saw the office staff come down from the upper floors for their lunch, in their nice clothes, smelling of perfume and air conditioning. And that was where he first saw the 3 women his mother had named. He did not know it was them, not yet. He only saw a beautiful woman in a fitted green dress walk past his end of the bench, see a wet patch on the floor where someone had spilled water, and stop. Who is supposed to clean this? She said, to nobody, to the room. Her voice carried. Is there no store boy? Somebody call a store boy before I ruin my shoes. A girl at the next table said, Auntie Ifeyinwa, the cleaner has gone for break. Then what are we paying them for? Ifeyinwa stepped around the water with the disgust of a woman avoiding a corpse, and her eyes passed over Dube in his grey uniform and registered absolutely nothing. He was furniture. He was part of the wet floor. She walked on, so that is Ife Yinwa, Dube thought, and went back to his rice. The second woman he noticed because she was kind in a way that made the hair on his neck stand up, though he could not yet say why. Kiamaka. She came in soft-footed and gentle, and when an older cleaner came in carrying a heavy tray, Kiamaka rushed to help her loudly, sweetly. "Ah, Mama, let me. You should not be carrying this." And 3 senior managers at the corner table looked up and smiled at her, and the moment they looked back down at their food, Kiamaka set the tray on the table a little too hard, and the warmth left her face like a light switched off, and she said to the old woman, "Lo, next time don't bring it through the middle. You are blocking people," and walked off to sit with the managers. Doob watched the whole thing over the rim of his cup. He filed it away. He was his father's son. He looked at a thing before he reacted to it. The third woman he did not notice at all that first day, which he would understand much later was the entire point of her. Now the days began to stack up like Sylvanus's cartons, one heavy thing on top of another. Dube swept the warehouse floors. He carried stock. He pushed trolleys with a wheel that screamed. He learned that a man in a grey uniform is spoken to differently than a man in a suit, not just less politely, but as if he has no inner life at all, as if you can say anything in front of him, because he is a kind of useful animal that happens to understand instructions. Office staff discussed their salaries in front of him, their affairs, their plans, their contempt for each other, the way you talk in front of a dog. He learned more about Greenmark in 2 weeks of invisibility than his mother had learned in 26 years of being feared, and he learned the 3 women. Ifeyinwa was the loudest education. She worked in marketing, and his mother had been right, genuinely sharp. She could read a sales report and find the lie in it faster than people twice her age. But she had decided somewhere along the way that the world owed her a soft landing and that the people below her existed to provide it. She did not insult Dube with any particular hatred. That was the worst part. It was casual, the way you might kick a stone out of your path. One morning she came down to the store to collect promotional banners for a supermarket launch. Dubey was the one sent to carry them out to her car. "Be careful with those, store boy. They cost more than your whole life." She said it while looking at her phone. "And don't lean them on the dirty side of the trolley. Are you mad? Look at your hands. Don't touch the printed surface with those hands." "Yes, ma. Yes, ma." She looked up at him then, properly for the first time, and something flickered because even in a grey uniform Dube was a striking man, and Ifeyinwa noticed men the way a cashier notices money, but the flicker died as fast as it came. "Such a waste," she said. "A face like that and you are carrying load. Some people are just born to carry, eh? You should have read your books." She got into her car. "Load them properly. If one is bent, it comes from your salary." He loaded them properly. None were bent. As she drove off, he stood in the sun and felt the anger move through him like a current and then pass, because he had promised his mother he would not react. And because this was the strange gift of the grey uniform, he was learning to see anger as information rather than insult. If Yinhua had shown him exactly who she was in 90 seconds, for free, there was no point being angry at a free gift. Chiamaka was the harder education, because Chiamaka was clever. She figured out, faster than anyone, that being kind to the lowest staff in front of senior managers was a strategy with a high rate of return. So she performed it constantly. She would greet the cleaners by name when a director was passing. She would carry an old woman's bucket for exactly as long as it took to be seen, then set it down. She started a small campaign, very visible, to get better rest facilities for the warehouse staff, and she made sure Mrs. Bowes, the chairwoman's secretary, heard about it from 3 different directions. But Dube, being invisible, saw the other Chiamaka. The one who told the security man at the gate that he smelled and should stand further back. The one who made the tea girl cry over a wrong order and then, when a manager appeared, put her arm around the same girl and said, "Ah, don't cry, what happened?" as if she had just arrived on the scene. The one who, alone in the corridor with Dube, would walk past as though he were a smell. There was a day Chiamaka dropped a file in the corridor pages everywhere, and Dube, passing with a mop, bent automatically to help her gather them. She let him. She watched him crawl on the floor picking up her pages. When he handed them to her, she did not say thank you. She took them, checked that none were dirty, and said, "You should wash your hands more often, store boy. People have to touch these papers after you." And she walked off. No manager had been watching. That was the real Chiamaka, the one who only existed when nobody important could see her. And Dube understood then that of the two of them, Chiamaka was the more dangerous. Because Ifeanwa's cruelty was at least honest. And then there was Amarachi. He noticed her properly on the 11th day, and even then it was almost an accident. He was carrying 2 crates of bottled water across the yard in the worst heat of the afternoon, and the strap of his left boot had come loose, and he could feel it, but he could not stop, because if he set the crates down on the hot tarmac, the bottles would well. Sylvanus had theories about that. So he was walking on a half-tied boot with 30 kilos in his arms, and a young woman in inventory control came out of the side office with a clipboard, saw him, and without any drama at all set her clipboard on the wall, came over, and knelt down. "Hold still. Ma, your boot. Hold still, or you will fall and break the bottles, and then they will take it from your pay." She tied his bootlace, tight, double-knotted, the way you tie a child's shoe, then stood and picked up her clipboard. There. Sylvanus sends people out in this heat with no water for themselves, carrying water and dying of thirst. She shook her head. "Come to the side office when you finish that. There is a cooler. Drink something." And she walked back inside, already looking at her clipboard again, as though she had not just knelt on hot tarmac to tie a store boy's shoe. Dube stood there a moment with the crates in his arms. Nobody had been watching. There had been no manager in the yard, no director, no Mrs. Bowes, nobody for the gesture to perform for. She had done it because his boot was loose and he was carrying water in the sun. That was all. That was everything. He went to the side office when he finished, and that was the first real conversation. Her name was Amarachi, Amara. She had been with Greenmark 4 years in inventory control, and she was good at it in the unshowy way of people who are simply competent and assume that is normal. She poured him water from the cooler into a paper cup and one for herself, and she did not ask him anything probing, did not try to figure out his story, did not perform sympathy. She just talked to him like a person. "You are new. 2 weeks. Sylvanus is a tyrant, but he is fair. If your numbers are right, he cannot touch you. Keep your numbers right and write down everything he tells you, with the date, because he forgets what he said and then blames you." She sipped her water. "You count well. I checked the batch sheet you did Monday. It was cleaner than the man who did it for 6 years. You checked my sheet? Everything in this building passes through inventory eventually. I see who is careful and who is not." She shrugged. "You are careful. That is rare in this job. Don't let them make you stop being careful just because they treat you like you don't matter. The work is the work. A job does not tell you a man's value. His hands do, sometimes. His eyes, more." Dube looked at this woman in the plain inventory office chair, with her clipboard and her cheap watch and her complete lack of interest in impressing anyone, and felt something shift in his chest that had nothing to do with the heat. "Why are you kind to me?" he asked. It came out before he could stop it. Amara looked at him as if he had asked something genuinely strange. "Why would I not be? You are a person. You carry water in the sun for a wage smaller than mine. What kind of human being would I be if I made that harder for you?" She rinsed her cup. "Some people in this place think the uniform is the person. The uniform is just cloth. Drink your water. Sylvanus will be looking for you." Over the next weeks, without either of them deciding it, they became something. Not loud. Not a thing anyone in the building would have noticed. Because Amara was not the kind to be noticed, and Dube was invisible by design. But he started finding small reasons to pass inventory control. She started leaving a wrapped piece of bread on the cooler for whoever is hungry, which was always him. Once she found him eating nothing at lunch because he had given his food to a younger boy whose mother was sick, and she said nothing. But the next day there were 2 wraps of bread on the cooler instead of 1, and she never mentioned it. He told her things, slowly, Not the truth, he could not, but real things underneath the lie. That his father had died when he was 14. That his father used to say a company is how the smallest man inside it is treated. He watched her face when he said that, and she nodded slowly and said, "Your father and I would have agreed about most things." And he had to look away. She told him things too. That she had grown up with very little. That her own mother had cleaned offices like the ones upstairs. That she knew exactly what it felt like to be the invisible person at the edge of the room, and that this was why she would rather lose her job than become one of the people who looked through the help. "I have been the help," she said. "You don't forget. Or you shouldn't." One evening, late, when the warehouse had emptied and Doob was mopping the loading bay alone, Amara came down to find a misplaced inventory file and found him instead. She helped him stack the last of the chairs. The big roller door was half open, and the night air was coming in cool off the industrial road. And for a while neither of them said anything, and the silence was not uncomfortable. "Can I tell you something?" Doob said, "and you will not laugh." "I might laugh. Tell me anyway. When I came here I thought I knew what kind of person I was. A good person, generous. I would have told you I respected everyone." He leaned on the mop. "But I had never been on this side of it. You don't know what you are until you have been treated like nothing by people who think there is no cost. I have learned more about being a good man from watching you tie my boot than from 25 years of being told I was one." Amara was quiet. Then she said, "You talk like an educated man, you know, for a store boy." His heart stopped for one whole second. Then she smiled, just a little, and added, "It's good. Don't let them take it. Education is not only certificates. It is how you see people. You see them properly. Most people in suits don't." And the second passed, and he could breathe again, and he understood that she had not been suspicious, she had been complimenting him, and the danger he had felt was only his own guilt about the lie he was telling this honest woman. That guilt was the first crack in the plan, and it would only grow. By the 7th week, 2 things had happened in parallel, and they were on a collision course. The first was that Dube had fallen, completely and quietly, for Amarachi, and she for him, though neither had said a word that could not be taken back. They kept it private. Partly because Dube was carrying a secret that made everything provisional, and partly because Amara was a private person who would have hated to be office gossip. But it was there. It was in the bread on the cooler and the double-knotted bootlace, and the way he saved the cleanest paper cup for her. The second was that Ifeyinwa and Chiamaka had both, separately, decided that the chairwoman's son was coming home. Soon the rumor had finally reached the lower floors, and that each of them intended to be standing in the right place when he arrived. And both of them, in their own way, had noticed that the new store boy was spending a suspicious amount of time near inventory control, and that Amarachi from inventory was carrying herself with a new, quiet lightness, and they did not like it. Ifeyinwa was the first to strike, because Ifeyinwa was always first and always loudest. She caught Amara in the corridor outside the canteen one lunchtime, in front of a small audience, which was the only way Ifeyinwa ever did anything. "Amarachi, inventory Amarachi." She said the name like it was slightly funny. "I have been hearing things. They say you and the store boy are what is the word close." She wrinkled her nose. "Is it true? You and Doob? The one who carries my banners?" "We are friends," Amara said, calm. She did not even put down the file she was holding. "Friends." Ifeyinwa looked at the audience and laughed, inviting them to laugh, and a few nervous ones did. "Of course. Birds of a feather. You know, I always wondered what your level was, Amarachi. Now I know. A girl who counts other people's cartons, and a boy who carries them. Beautiful. You will make beautiful poor babies together." The audience went quiet, because this was sharp even for Ifeyinwa. "Honestly, do you have no ambition? You are not ugly. You could do better than a man who feeds from hand to mouth, who has nothing, who will give you nothing but more counting. But I suppose," she shrugged, "some people are just born to carry, and they find each other. It is almost sweet." Amara waited until she was sure Ifeyinwa was finished. Then she said, in a voice that did not rise at all, which somehow made it worse, "You called him a man who feeds from hand to mouth. You don't know what he eats or doesn't eat. You have never once asked his name. You call him Store Boy, and the one who carries my banners. His name is Dube. He counted 411 cartons correctly on his first day, which is more than anyone in your department has ever counted correctly in their lives. He has more dignity carrying those banners than you have giving the orders. She tucked the file under her arm. And one more thing. The day you learn that a person's worth is not in their uniform, you will be a much happier woman. Until then, I have inventory to do. Excuse me. And she walked through the dead silent corridor and left Ifeyinwa standing there with her mouth slightly open, and the small audience suddenly very interested in their food. Dube heard about it within the hour. Bad news travels fastest of all in a warehouse, and when he next saw Amara, he did not know how to thank her for defending a man. She did not know she was defending so completely. You shouldn't have, he said. You'll make an enemy. I already had an enemy. I just stopped pretending I didn't. She handed him a wrap of bread. Eat. You skipped lunch again to listen to gossip about yourself. Chiamaka's strike was quieter and far more calculated, and it came a few days later. Chiamaka had decided that Amara was a problem to be removed, but she would never have done anything as crude as Ifeyinwa's public attack. Instead, she went to Dube. She found him alone in the store one evening, and she changed her whole self for him, soft voice, concerned eyes, a wrap of meat pie she had bought. Because you work so hard and nobody looks after you. Dube, can I talk to you, as a friend? She sat on a crate beside him, close. I am worried about you. I see you and Amarachi getting close, and I don't want to gossip, but you are a good person and I feel I should warn you. She lowered her voice. Amarachi is not what she seems. She is using you. People say it openly. She wants to look humble, you understand? She wants people to say, oh, see how down-to-earth Amara is. She even loves a store boy. It makes her look good. But the day a better man comes, a rich man, a manager, she will drop you like a hot coal. I have seen her do it before. I am only telling you because I care. Dube looked at the meat pie in her hands. He looked at her concerned, beautiful, completely false face. And he thought about Amara kneeling on hot tarmac to tie his boot when nobody was watching, and he thought about the bread on the cooler, and he very nearly laughed. Thank you for caring, Chiamaka, he said evenly. I will remember everything you have told me. She smiled, satisfied, certain she had planted the seed, and patted his arm and left the meat pie. He did not eat it. He gave it to the night security man at the gate, the one Chiamaka had told to stand further back because he smelled, and the man was so surprised by the kindness that he shook Dube's hand with both of his. That night Dube went home to his mother's house and they sat in the parlor, and for the first time in 7 weeks he was angry. Mummy, he said, I have something to tell you about Chiamaka. Adeyeze put down her tea. Tell me, he told her. The corridor, the file, wash your hands more often. The tea girl, the security man. The performance of kindness when managers passed and its instant disappearance when they didn't. And finally the meat pie and the lie about Amara. His mother listened to all of it without a word, and when he finished, she was quiet for a long time. I suspected, she said at last. Bose told me Chiamaka had been very busy looking helpful. Very busy making sure I noticed her being kind. A truly kind person does not work that hard to be noticed. She shook her head slowly. Ifeyinwa is a thorn. Everyone can see the thorn, so the thorn cannot cut you by surprise. But Chiamaka is a soft hand with a blade hidden in it. That is the more dangerous one. Your father used to say, beware the person who is generous only when there is an audience. Their generosity is not a gift, it is an invoice. And Amara. His mother looked at her son's face when he said the name, and something in her own face softened, and she allowed herself a small smile. You did not say her name like that about the others. Mummy, I asked you a question with my eyes, and you answered it with your face. It is fine. She picked up her tea again. Tell me about Amara, the real things. Not what she did for a manager. What she did when she thought nobody who mattered was watching. So he told her about the boot, the bread, the paper cups. Some people in this place think the uniform is the person. The uniform is just cloth. The way she had defended Dube, the store boy, to Ifeyinwa's face without any idea there was anything to gain from it, and at real cost to herself. When he finished, Chief Adeas Okonkwo set down her tea and looked at her late husband's photograph on the wall, and she said very quietly, "Emmanuel, we found one. After all of this, we found one." And then to her son, 23 more days. Finish them. Honor your father's clause, and do not do them. Look at me, do not reveal yourself to that girl 1 second early. Not because I doubt her. Because she deserves to choose you while she still believes you have nothing. Do you understand? Let her finish choosing the store boy before she ever meets my son. That is the only way the choice stays clean. For her sake, not yours. Yes, Mummy, 23 days. Now eat. You have lost weight. They are working my son like a donkey, and I am paying them to do it. And she laughed. Finally, a real laugh, and the dead man in her smile had stepped back a little, just for that night. But 23 days is a long time, and the two women were not finished. Ifyinwa, stung by the corridor humiliation, had been nursing it the way she nursed all her injuries loudly to her friend Ogechi in marketing, who lived for the drama. That inventory girl embarrassed me, Ogechi, in front of everybody, over a store boy. I will not forget it. Forget it, Ify. She is nobody. No. When the chairwoman's son comes, and he will come soon, I will make sure she is the first person he sees properly humiliated. Let her be standing next to her store boy boyfriend when the real man arrives, so everybody can see the difference between her level and mine. Ifyinwa smiled. I am going to make a small party, a welcome arrangement. I will be the one who organizes it, and I will make sure to invite generously the lowest staff, the cleaners, the store boys, especially Dube. Let them come in their best poor clothes and stand in the corner, and let the new CEO see who is who in this company on his very first day. I will look like the kind benefactor who included everyone, and they will look like exactly what they are. It was, she thought, a perfect plan. Cruelty disguised as generosity with witnesses. She did not know she was building the stage for her own execution. Chiamaka, for her part, had not given up on Dube. She had given up on warning him about Amara and moved to a new strategy. Getting close to Ikenna, the operations manager, who she had correctly identified as the man closest to the chairwoman, the man who would know things. She began visiting his office with small problems and smaller gifts, a coffee, a compliment about a tie, a question, always casual, always slipped in at the end. By the way, Oga Ikenna, is it true the chairwoman's son is coming back? Do you know what kind of woman he likes? Some men like quiet women, some like bold. No reason, just curious. I like gist. Ikenna, who knew exactly who the store boy was and exactly what game Chiamaka was playing, gave her nothing and reported every word to the chairwoman. Ma, he said, this Chiamaka is mapping your son like a hunter maps a forest. She wants to know what he likes so she can become it. She is not looking for a husband. She is looking for a position, and she has decided your son is the door to it. Adaze only nodded. Let her keep mapping. The forest she thinks she is hunting is already watching her. The 88th day. 2 days before the 90 would be complete, and Dube could finally stop carrying cartons and start deezing himself. Ifeyinwa's welcome party happened, and it happened in the worst possible way for everyone except the people who deserved it. It was held in the large staff hall. On the ground floor, Ifeyinwa had pushed the whole thing through, under the banner of staff morale before the new leadership arrives, and management, sensing it cost them nothing, had let her. She had decorated it. She had a small budget, and, true to her plan, she had personally and very visibly invited the lowest staff, including Dube, so that nobody feels left out, because at Greenmark we are one family. She said that last part to a manager's face. Dube, when the invitation reached him, understood the cruelty in it precisely, and he understood something else. His mother had told him this morning that she would be attending the staff hall today, with a special announcement about the company's future. He understood that the 90 days were about to collapse into one afternoon. He almost did not go. Then he thought, no, let it happen where she built it. The hall filled up. Office staff in their finest, sitting at the good tables near the front. The lower staff cleaners, store hands, security clustered awkwardly near the back wall, exactly where Ifeyinwa had wanted them, in their best clothes that were still poor clothes, looking like a stain on her nice party. Dube stood among them in a clean but worn shirt, his hands rough, a store boy in a corner. Amara was there too, not at the front with the office staff, where her grade technically allowed, but at the back, with the cleaners and the store hands, by choice, standing beside Dube. She had seen where Ifeyinwa put the low staff, and she had walked to the back on purpose. Ifenwa saw her do it and smiled like a cat. Chiamaka was near the front, in something soft and tasteful, positioned with great care for the entrance she expected. Ifenwa was at the center, glowing, the architect of the whole event, scanning the doors for the arrival of the new CEO she had built this entire stage to humiliate two people in front of. At 2:47 in the afternoon, the doors opened, and Chief Mrs. Adeze Okonkwo walked in, with Ikenna at her side and Mrs. Bowes just behind. The hall stood. The chairwoman did not often come to the ground floor. "Sit, sit," Adeze said warmly. "Thank you. I won't keep you long from Ifeyinwa's lovely party." A ripple of approval. Ifeyinwa preened. "I came because I have an announcement that affects every single person in this hall, from the directors at the front to the store hands at the back." Her eyes moved across the hall, slowly, and they passed over the back wall, over Amara, over her son, and gave nothing away. "As you all know, I will soon be stepping back from the daily running of Greenmark. My son has completed his studies and has come home. He will take his place as CEO of this company." The hall buzzed. Chiamaka straightened. Ifeyinwa's eyes shot to the main doors, waiting for the handsome stranger to walk through them. "But before I introduce him," Adeze went on, "I want to tell you something his father wrote 11 years ago before he died. My late husband, Chief Emmanuel, put a clause in his will. He wrote that before our son could lead this company, he must first spend 90 days working inside it at the very lowest level, doing the hardest, least respected work, with no one knowing who he was. My husband believed that a man who has never been treated like nothing will treat people like nothing the moment he has power. He wanted our son to know what it feels like to be invisible in his own company, so that he would never make anyone else feel that way." She paused. "Today is the 88th day." The hall had gone very, very quiet. Some of the office staff were beginning to do a terrible arithmetic in their heads. Ifeyinwa was still looking at the doors, certain, waiting for her victim to be revealed somewhere else, anywhere else. "For 88 days, Adeze said, my son has been in this building. He has swept these floors. He has carried your stock. He has been spoken to as though he had no name, no mind, no feelings. He has watched how this company treats the people it believes can do nothing for it. And he has watched very, very carefully." She turned at last toward the back wall, and she held out her hand. "Dubem, come." And the store boy in the worn shirt, the one in the corner with the cleaners, the one Ifeyinwa had invited as a decoration for his own humiliation, stepped forward out of the back of the hall and walked up the center aisle. And as he walked, the worn shirt did not change, but everything around it did, because now everyone was looking at the way he carried himself, the calm, the jaw, the eyes that had been watching all of them for 88 days. "This is my son," said Chief Adeze Okonkwo. "Chidubem Okonkwo, your CEO. The store boy you called Dube." The sound that went through the hall was not applause. It was the sound of 50 people inhaling at once. Ifeyinwa's face came apart in stages. First confusion, she was still half turned toward the doors. Then recognition, as her eyes found the man in the center aisle and matched him to the one who had carried her banners, the one she had called a waste, the one she had said was born to carry. Then the full, drowning understanding of what she had built this party for, and who she had built it in front of. She put her hand on the table to keep standing. Ktwaka understood faster, because Ktwaka was cleverer, and Dube watched her face do the calculation in real time, watched her recalculate every interaction, every cruelty performed without an audience, and arrive at the cliff edge of how much he had seen. She tried, even now. She arranged her features into warmth and rose. "Dubem, sir, I always knew there was something special about you. I always said, 'Sit down, Chiamaka,'" Dube said. Not loudly. The hall heard it anyway. She sat. He stood at the front, beside his mother, and he looked out at the hall, at the faces that had spent 88 days deciding he did not exist. He was not smiling. He was his father's son. He looked at a thing before he reacted to it. "I am not going to humiliate anyone today," he said, and the relief in the hall was visible. And then he continued, "Because what I saw does not need my help to humiliate anyone. It humiliates itself." He let that land. "I want to talk about what I learned, because my father was right, and I owe you all the truth of it. For 88 days I was dube. And in 88 days I learned that there are two companies inside Greenmark. There is the company you show to the chairwoman, and there is the company you show to the store boy. They are not the same company. In one of them, everyone is respectful and everyone is family. In the other one, he looked briefly at Ifeyinwa, and then at Chiamaka. A man is furniture. You discuss your salaries over his head. You spill water and call for someone born to clean it. You tell the security man at the gate that he smells. You make the tea girl cry and then comfort her when a director appears. You decide that a person's whole worth is printed on his uniform. Nobody moved. Ifeyinwa. She flinched at her name. You called me a waste. You said some people are just born to carry. You organized this entire party so that you could stand Lostaff in the corner and show the new CEO who was who. You were right that there is a difference between people. You were just catastrophically wrong about where the line is. You spent 88 days showing me exactly who you are. For free. I did not have to investigate you. You volunteered. Ifeyinwa was crying now, the silent, furious, terrified crying of someone watching a future evaporate. "Sir, please, I didn't know. That," said Dube, "is the entire problem. You only behave like a human being when you know the person in front of you can hurt you. That is not character. That is calculation. Character is how you treat the man who you are certain can do nothing for you." He turned. Chiamaka. Chiamaka did not beg. She was too clever to beg, and too clever to think begging would work. She simply looked at him with a steadiness that was, in its own cold way, almost admirable. "You were never cruel where it could be seen," Dube said. "You were kind for cameras. You carried an old woman's bucket exactly as long as a manager was watching, and set it down the second he turned the corner. You told me Amarachi was using me, that she only loved a store boy to look humble you, who only loved store boys when directors were looking. You went to my operations manager week after week, trying to map what kind of woman I like, so that you could become her." He shook his head slowly. "Ifeyinwa showed me a thorn. At least a thorn is honest about being a thorn. You showed me a flower with a blade inside it. My father warned me about you specifically, 11 years before he ever knew your name. Beware the person who is generous only when there is an audience. Their generosity is not a gift. It is an invoice." The hall was silent, and then Dubid's whole face changed, and he turned toward the back of the hall, toward the cleaners and the store hands, toward the one person who had not moved or spoken, who was standing very still with her hand pressed to her own mouth, who had only just, in the last 60 seconds, understood. "Amarachi," he said, and his voice changed when he said it the way it had changed in his mother's parlor. "Come here, please." Amara did not move. She could not. The man she had tied a bootlace for, the man she had defended to Ifeyinwa's face at real cost, the man she had fallen for, precisely because he had nothing, was the owner of the building she was standing in. She felt, in that moment, not joy but a kind of vertigo, the floor tilting. Because if he was the CEO, then everything she had said to him about uniforms and worth and being the help had been said to the richest man in the room. And she did not know whether she had been a fool. "Amara," he said again, gentler. "Please." She walked up the aisle. The whole hall watched the inventory girl who had stood at the back by choice walk to the front. Ifeyinwa watched her with pure hatred. Chiamaka watched her with something closer to despair. "You tied my boot," Dube said when she reached him, and he said it quietly, just for her, though the silent hall heard every word. On hot tarmac. When nobody was watching, there was no manager in that yard, Amara. There was no one to perform for. You knelt down on the ground in the sun, and you tied a store boy's shoe, because it was loose and he was carrying water, and you are the kind of person who cannot watch that and do nothing. You left bread on the cooler, for whoever is hungry, and it was always me, and you never once made me feel like a beggar for eating it. You defended me to Ifeyinwa's face, when you thought I was nothing at a cost to yourself, for no reward, because you thought it was simply true. You told me a job does not tell you a man's value. His voice was not quite steady now. You said the uniform is just cloth. You were talking to the man who owns the company, and you have never once, not for 1 second, treated me as anything less than a human being. Amara's eyes were full. I didn't know, she whispered. If I had known, if you had known, it would have meant nothing. He took her hand, there in front of all of them, the way he had not taken anyone's hand in 88 days. Don't you understand? That is the whole point. That is the only thing in the world that means anything. You chose the store boy. You chose him when there was nothing to gain and a price to pay. There is no money on earth that can buy what you just proved, because the moment money is involved, the proof is gone forever. He looked at his mother, who was openly weeping now and not bothering to hide it. My father wrote a clause to teach me what it feels like to be invisible. He could not have known it would also show me the one person who refused to let me be invisible. But I think he would have known. I think that was the whole point. Chief Adeze Okonkwo stepped forward, and she took Amara's other hand, this girl who had cleaned offices in her childhood the way Adeze's own mother once had, and she said, so the whole hall could hear, my daughter, you did not know there was a test. You passed it anyway. That is the only kind of passing that counts. And the hall finally did applaud the cleaners and the store hands and the security men first, loudest, on their feet, and then, more slowly, shamefully, the rest. The aftermath, because there is always an aftermath, and karma is not a single moment, but a long settling. If Yinwa did not last the week. She submitted her resignation the next morning before she could be called in, because she could not bear to walk the corridors as the woman who had thrown a humiliation party for the CEO. But Dube did not simply let her vanish. He called her in first. He did not shout. You are talented, Ifeyinwa. You can read a sales report better than anyone in your department. That is real, and it is yours, and no one can take it from you. But talent is not character, and this company is going to start treating the difference as if it matters, because it does. He slid a paper across the desk. I am accepting your resignation. But I have also arranged for you to be referred to a workplace conduct program, a real one, not a punishment. A genuine course on dignity and respect in the workplace, run by people who know the law and know the cost of getting it wrong. Whether you take it is your business. I hope you do. Because the next company will not have a clause in a dead man's will to protect the people you look down on. It will just have the law. And the law is less forgiving than I am being right now. She took the paper. She did not say thank you, but she did not sneer either, and at the door she stopped, and without turning around she said, very quietly, his name was Dube. I never asked. I'm sorry. And she left. It was the most honest thing she had said in 88 days, and Dube chose to believe it was a beginning. Chiamaka was harder, because Chiamaka was not sorry, only caught. She did not resign. She stayed, smiling her soft smile, and for a while she tried to rebuild her position through Ikenna and Mrs. Bose. But the thing about a mask, once it has slipped in front of the whole company, is that everyone has now seen the face behind it, and they cannot unsee it. The cleaners no longer believed her kindness. The managers she had performed for now knew the performance. Her soft voice, which had opened so many doors, now made people check their pockets. Dube did not fire her. He did something quieter and more exact. He removed her from every role that depended on trust, and he made the company's new conduct standards apply to her with particular attention. And he let her discover, day by day, that a flower with a blade inside it is worth nothing once everyone knows about the blade. She lasted 4 months. Then she left for another company, where perhaps she started again, and perhaps did better, because some people only learn when the audience is finally, permanently gone. And the company itself changed, which was the part that mattered most, because a single humiliation in a staff hall fixes nothing if the building goes back to sleep the next day. Dube Chidubem Okonkwo, CEO, kept the grey uniform. He hung it in his office, where everyone could see it. He raised the wages of the lowest grade staff first before any management bonus, and he said so publicly. He built the rest area for the warehouse staff, that Chiamaka had only pretended to want, and he named it after no one. Because the point is not who is generous. The point is that you should not need anyone's generosity to be treated like a human being. He wrote a real conduct policy with help from people who actually understood employment law, and he made one rule the spine of the whole thing. How this company treats its lowest paid worker matters exactly as much as how it treats its highest paid director, and anyone who forgets that will find out that it matters. Because there will be consequences, and the consequences will be real. He told the whole staff in his first all-hands meeting as CEO, standing beside the hung-up grey uniform. No one in this building is invisible. If the store hand does not stack the crate, your supermarket shelf is empty. If the cleaner does not clean, your office smells, and your client notices, and your contract suffers. If the security man does not stand at that gate, none of us sleeps safely. There is no small job. There is only small thinking about jobs. We are done with small thinking here. And Amarachi. She did not become proud, which was the thing his mother watched for most carefully, and the thing his mother need not have worried about at all. She did not move to the front tables in the canteen. She kept counting cartons brilliantly until Dube over her objections, because she did not want anyone to say she had been carried, eventually moved her into a real management role in operations that she earned on the cleanest numbers in the company's history. And even then, the first thing she did with the position was fix the water situation in the yard, so that no store boy would ever again carry water through the heat with nothing to drink himself. He took her to meet his mother properly, not as the chairwoman, but as Mama. And he asked her, some months later, in the same yard where she had once knelt to tie his boot, with no audience and no party and no announcement, just the two of them and the cool evening air off the industrial road. He knelt the way she had once knelt. He said, "You tied my shoe when I was nobody. Let me spend my life tying yours." She laughed and cried, and said, the laughing made the crying ridiculous, and said yes. They married. It was not a small wedding, because Chief Adeze Okonkwo had waited 11 years and was not going to be quiet about it. But the people at the front tables were not the directors. The front row, on Jube's instruction, was the cleaners, the store hands, the security men, Mama Nkiru, who had carried the heavy tray, Toby the boy whose food Dube had once given away, and the old security man from the gate who had been told he smelled and had shaken Dube's hand with both of his. They sat at the front. The directors sat behind them. Nobody said anything about it. Everybody understood. And at the reception, Chief Adeze stood up, and she lifted her glass, and she said only this: "My husband wrote a clause to make sure his son would never look down on anyone. He died before he could see it work. But I want to tell you what I have learned watching it work these 90 days. You can teach a person manners. You cannot teach a person character. Manners are how you behave toward people who can help you. Character is how you behave toward people who cannot. My son went looking for the second kind, and almost everyone showed him the first. One person showed him the second, without knowing she was being watched, because she did not know any other way to be. She raised the glass higher. Amarachi, my daughter, you did not pass a test. You simply were the answer, the whole time before there was ever a question. To you." Months later, long after the story had become company legend, a new intake of store hands arrived at the warehouse. Frightened young men in grey uniforms, and an older woman from operations came down to the yard to check on them. She was somebody important now, everyone said so. But she came down herself, the way she always had. She found one of the new boys carrying crates in the heat with a loose bootlace, struggling, afraid to put the crates down. She set her clipboard on the wall. She knelt on the hot tarmac. "Hold still," she said, "or you will fall and break the bottles, and they will take it from your pay." She double-knotted the lace, tight, the way you tie a child's shoe. "There. Come to the side office when you finish. There is a cooler. Drink something. Nobody in this company should carry water and die of thirst." And she picked up her clipboard and walked back inside, already looking at her numbers, as though she had not just done the most important thing that would happen in that yard all day. The boy stood there a moment, the crates in his arms, watching her go. He did not know who she was. He did not know that the man who owned the whole company had married her in this very yard, or that she had once been exactly where he was standing. He only knew that someone important had knelt in the sun to tie his shoe, and that nobody had ever done that for him before, and that he would, one day, when he had the chance, do it for someone else. That is how it spreads. Not through speeches, not through clauses in wills. Through one person kneeling in the sun for another, where nobody is watching, because they do not know any other way to be.